Venture also is very much in need of some change, more diversity, more women. It's historically not been an industry that's had a lot of women making decisions about where to invest and who to invest in. And so I'm happy to be part of the change. I'm happy to bring my perspective. And I think we do pick companies where we don't bring a lot of the bias.
Welcome to Knowing Me, Knowing You, the podcast for the future of wealth management. Thanks for being here. I'm Marla Sofer. Money is a tool. It empowers people. Let's dive into how technology is personalizing advice, strengthening connections, and creating lasting impact. If you're an advisor looking to differentiate, a fintech leader shaping the next wave, or a client ready to take control of your financial future, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hi, and today we are thrilled to welcome Jackie Shoback, co-founder and managing director at 1414 Ventures, a venture firm dedicated to early-stage investments in digital identity innovation. Jackie brings an incredible breadth of experience from serving in C-suite roles across financial services and consumer industries at companies like Fidelity, TIAA, and Staples, to leading divisions with over $1 billion in revenue. Now she is channeling her expertise into shaping the future of digital identity, cybersecurity, fraud prevention, and data governance, all critical to the evolving landscape of finance and client engagement. Jackie also serves on the board of TrueStage, Signitize, and Perspective Equity Partners. She's also an advisor at the MIT Media Lab's Decentralized AI Roundtable. We're extremely excited to dive into her views on why digital identity matters for our future and how venture allocations can drive innovation and what this means for the next wave of wealth management. Jackie, welcome to the Knowing Me, Knowing You podcast.
Thank you so much, Marla. I'm so excited to be with you today.
Delighted that you carved out this time on this hot day in the Northeast. What excites you about the moment that we're in right now, about the future of wealth and money?
Well, there is so much happening, but I'd have to say there are three key megatrends that are all converging that really create for the perfect, I'm not going to say storm, I'm going to say the perfect time for opportunity capitalization. First is the great wealth transfer. I think hopefully everyone knows there's about 80 trillion in total that's going to transfer from one generation to the next over the next 2 decades. And the bulk of it will have happened by 2048. That is a huge money in motion event. And I say that because whenever money is in motion, it creates opportunity. This changing of who will be in charge, controlling assets and making decisions is a great opportunity for anyone coming in with new thinking, fresh frameworks, and a new approach to embrace what the next generation will value. The second big thing is emerging streams of technology platforms changing how we do business. And I say that specifically because there are 3 key streams merging together. There's the digital transformation stream, there's data, which is at the crux of everything, and then there's Gen AI and even agentic AI beyond that. These 3 mega work streams, technical emerging technology streams, if you will, are going to change how people interact. So one trend is about who, this trend is about how. And then finally, I think the third one that really sort of supercharges these other 2 is what I sort of call the unbundling of wealth management, or the unbundling of the wealth management offering. That unbundling, whether it's embedded finance or embedded planning, it creates an opportunity to disrupt the old players and come in with new brands and new approaches, frankly, through channels that aren't traditional, and puts opportunity in the hands of firms that may not even dub themselves financial firms, but are more technology platforms.
Fantastic. Lots to be excited about. And you talked about who, how, and a bit about structure. Your background is so fascinating because you have been an exec at a couple of different companies. You've been an exec in the financial industry, and now you're running a fund focused on digital identity. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey? What brought you to this point to want to be in venture and to want to focus on this topic of digital identity specifically?
Sure. Well, funny enough, it was a few things also merging at the same time. So my staples part of my career was the first 10 years out of business school. And I mentioned that because I joined when the company was about 300 million in revenue. I worked for the founder at the time, Tom Stemberg. And so it grew from 300 million to about 15 billion or so over that 10-year period. Tremendous growth, hyper growth. And I got to, as a result of, being there at that time, I got to wear many different hats. I got to launch many different businesses. I really became a scale expert. But more important, I really got the taste of what it was like being an entrepreneur. Granted, it was within a bigger structure, but launching, scaling, growing businesses. I did that several times while I was there, from small to quite large. Fast forward the next 15 years, I spent in financial services at some huge, wonderful companies, wonderful brands, and really honed in on my operating acumen, along with other functions, including marketing. But the real common thread over that 15 years was digital transformation. And by 2020, when I was sort of thinking about what I wanted to do next, having just led through a pretty significant digital transformation when I was at Boston Private, been a division CEO there, I thought about the fact that I always wanted to do something on my own, but the timing was never quite right. And it seemed in 2020, the time was right for me personally and professionally. So the digital transformation work really led to digital identity because at the end of the day, digital identity is really all about the data, how you're capturing, sharing, storing. And digital transformation, the best ones I've ever done were the ones where we really had a very compelling and precise data strategy. That was oftentimes the crux of sort of what ended up being a great digital transformation program versus, an okay digital transformation program. So we took the plunge in 2020 to start 1414 Ventures. The area was about 500 billion in size back then. It's just under $1 trillion now, and it's on its way to 1.3 trillion. So the market has just about doubled in 4 years, 3 to 4 years, and will probably grow to 1.3 trillion or higher in the next 2. So huge growth. And then at the same time, I would say as the digital economy, the data economy, and now generative AI, there are even more tailwinds driving that market. Everything from, I hate to say it, global cybercrime, which is about a $17 trillion size right now. It'd be the third largest GDP if there were one in the world, if it were a country. And then, of course, the rise of agentic AI and identity management needed for that. 2030, there will be more non-humans online than people, and someone's got to be thinking about the guardrails there. So we couldn't have predicted all of this back in 2020, but the point being, we knew that it was early days in digital identity, and we knew that it would become more important, I would say, between the pandemic, between generative AI, between fraud prevention, all these other things I mentioned. It's only accelerated the growth and the importance of digital identity in a tech stack and the importance of data privacy, security, and data governance. Really for all. It's very important, not only in people's business lives, but in their personal lives. Yeah. And then, of course, venture, I would say that, when we were thinking about what stage we wanted to play in, pre-seed, seed, it's a lot of fun. And you have such an opportunity to shape a company, but also work with the founders. I think I mentioned I'm really an operator at heart. I've been through so many different scale situations. My co-founder, Howard Hall, same thing. He's 3-time successful serial entrepreneur who's had multiple exits. And so we kind of picked the stage because we feel it's not only where there's the greatest upside, but where there's the most opportunity for investors who are experienced like we are, operator investors, we like to call ourselves, to lean in and really help our founders achieve their milestones. And of course, last but not least, not only is it paying it forward with the investing part and being a mentor and advisor to the entrepreneurs we work with, venture also is very much in need of some change, more diversity, more women. It's historically not been an industry that's had a lot of women making decisions about where to invest and who to invest in. And so I'm happy to be part of the change. I'm happy to bring my perspective. And I think we do pick companies where we don't bring a lot of the bias into our decision making. And that's obviously, it's paid off well for us, has scaled.
Yeah, as you walk through your journey, it's easy to kind of see the true through line that you start as an operator focused on growth, and you looked at digital transformation. You identified this key opportunity as it relates to the massive growing market of identity. And you're also seeing this opportunity in the change, and you want to bring more change to it. When you think about digital identity and money, you recognize that it is such a hugely important topic. It's a foundational issue across commerce, but it's also, as you think about what this podcast is, we talk to a lot of wealth managers and people who are focused on their own money. How do you see digital identity as a foundational part of client trust? When you think about the relationship with the industry, delivering holistic wealth management, what you were talking about before, maybe the unbundling, what is the role that digital identity plays in that?
Yeah. So you sort of hit the nail on the head. Digital identity is really the connective tissue. It's the way that you're able to establish trust between the counterparty that you're doing business with. And I think I mentioned already about fraud prevention, the soaring identity theft. As we bring more and more of our transactions and interactions online. And then not only that, but as we introduce new technologies like Gen AI tools, agentic AI, things like that, the way that we establish trust is going to need to iterate and change so that it stays in step with the new improved protocols, the security requirements, the privacy requirements, and still the efficiency requirements. So I say all of that because digital identity is kind of at the crux of that. It's the connective tissue, and the next generation of digital identity tools and orchestration layers will be the ones that ensure businesses, people, agents, everyone can operate in an aligned, secure, and trustworthy way.
What if financial planning wasn't just about numbers, but about you, your values, your goals, your vision for the future? Knomee is transforming client discovery for wealth managers, going beyond assets and risk scores to uncover what truly matters. With behavioral insights and real-time data, Knomee helps advisors personalize advice, build deeper connections, and grow their businesses. Because the best financial decisions start with knowing you. Discover the future of client engagement at Knomee.com. That makes a lot of sense. At 1414 Ventures, you see a whole lot of early stage companies. One thing that we do at Knomee is we're very focused on agency, this desire for control and accountability for individuals who really want to have this relationship with their futures, their money. And a lot of our approach is focused on, well, what's their incentives? We really go deep into kind of the incentives. And we think about how can we incentivize somebody to care about constructing data that's going to power them and power the industry. You've had a lot of access to a whole lot of different early stage companies that are looking to implement and drive the future of identity, redefine privacy, security, all of those things that keep in step with not only those evolving protocols, but the evolving threats? What are the things that the people that are listening here can learn from those early stage companies? What are we just not familiar with? If you're kind of talking to one of the bigger financial firms or an emerging wealth manager, where they don't even know that there are early stage companies thinking about digital identity in this way.
Yeah, I think a couple of things. First of all, so some of the emerging platforms that I see are ones that are built to not only be very agile, but they're also built with some of the European privacy and security regulations in mind. So I say that because GDPR, for example, in Europe, it's a higher standard than we have here in the US. So that's actually a good thing, because for US based large financial services providers, there are already platforms that are quite proven, not based here, but perhaps out of Europe, that are already operating at a much more robust level than some of the large, well-known brands, if you will, that are out there in the security space. The second thing I was going to say is there's a lot more focus. Some of the emerging platforms are much more focused on vulnerability identification, threat detection, and real-time monitoring, not just of what's happening in your network, but real-time monitoring, incorporating third-party data from various other sources, including breaches to the dark web and things like that. So I bring that up because some of this cutting edge technology, these are small companies. They're seed stage companies. They're just starting to become more known. And the truth of the matter is, many of these companies, hopefully they'll be able to scale quickly, because I think the larger platforms actually have gaps in the way they're monitoring and trying to detect vulnerabilities. They're using old tools, and they might not be quite aware of some of these new tools because they're sort of still under the radar. But I see that. One example I want to mention real quick is also third-party risk monitoring. That is a huge one, because as it becomes more and more known, a lot of the breaches and the incidents that we do see, there's a very big rise in what's called third party, meaning a lot of companies do business. They know their direct partner. They don't know the secondaries. They don't know the tertiaries. They don't know, there's a
third,
whole
fourth, fifth, sixth party. Yes.
Yes. And so there are platforms, this whole next generation, we're actually invested in one of them, Know Your Partner. It's actually the name of the firm, KYP. That's just one example. We have others too. But the point being, these are sort of that next generation of platform that basically is filling a gap and providing intel where there's blindness, and also response and resolution where historically other platforms might tell you, oh, there's a problem here, and then you have to go figure out how to fix it. Where some of the new platforms, because AI is built in, and the platforms get smarter as they get more volume and more data, they not only can detect, they can respond. So again, I think that's a huge area of where the market's going. I think, again, it's still, I know some large financial services companies that still aren't using the full set of the toolbox because it's still so new, the end I'm talking about.
Or even their own data. And we've seen that time and again. They have quite a lot of their own data that they're not using. So you've talked a lot about this risky, negative, scary side of identity and data. In fact, I have an anecdote in my own family. So my daughter's 19 and she just got her first, I think it's her first letter saying, your identity's been breached. Here is your 1 month or 1 year free subscription to some sort of identity protection. She was like, what is this all about? And I said, oh, yes, actually, I think most adults have received at least one of those at some point in their lifetime. What about on the positive side? How does strengthening and creating digital identity open doors for underserved communities, for those that want more access? And how does that look in the future? And how does that relate to the mission at 1414?
No, it's a great question. So you're right. There is the whole risk management side of the business and protection, but then there's also the accessibility side of the business. And what I mean by that is there are a lot of people in this country, and then I'd say other countries, definitely not the more advanced countries, but more of the developing countries where, they haven't really historically had, like we have our whole, social security system. And that's a way to execute the transfer of benefits and help to people, right? Because that system exists. But digital identity in developing countries, we've seen where, and there's a great use case where it was used even with refugees as they were fleeing from, one country to safety. Digital identity enables people to have really digital credentials that are trusted and that are verifiable and can establish the profile and the trusted relationship such that then they have access, whether it's to benefits and services from their government, from their country, or, and I'll give an example of another company we've invested in. We have a company out of Colombia, Avanzo, that works with enterprises, with companies to make lending, loans, personal loans, lines of credit, as well as financial management and financial education available to their employees. The reason that matters is because in that country, there really isn't beyond probably 5% of the population lines of credit, loans available to middle class working individuals. So these companies that contract with our company, they recognize that there's a great benefit for their employees to have that kind of access. It gives them access to capital so that they can buy things that they really need. It enables them to establish credit. It enables them to establish a whole, we call it digital identity profile, so that the data around the individual, is trusted and true. And that's another problem in a lot of developing countries. The data doesn't exist to be able to make the decisions. At least good data doesn't exist to be able to make the decisions. So that's why for us partnering with an employer and having their employees' data available that way and working together with them, we're able to help establish not only a digital identity graph, but a way for them to access capital to raise their standard of living and raise their standard of life.
That makes a lot of sense. What is one instance, Jackie, in your life? You've been through quite a lot. You've been an executive in a couple of different industries. What's an instance, a conversation you've had that has changed your own personal relationship with money?
Well, so two quick things on this point. So first, when I was at TIAA, we did quite a bit of research when we were looking to segment our participant and customer base. We did a lot of research, quantitative research around different constituents, feelings, ideas, relationship with money. And I'd say two things we sort of learned. One, your relationship with money, with wealth, with money is established when you're very young. And second, I'm going to make a bit of a generalization, but one of the big outputs we also learned from this research was people tend to be either a net saver or a net spender. So it was interesting. I hadn't really thought a lot about it, but I have always been a net saver. And I was thinking about it. It really did have a lot to do with the way that I was brought up and really having very much respect for, the value of money, the value of hard work. And the other point I wanted to make was I think I had a really big aha moment probably when I was in my 20s, when I really started to learn the power of compounding and what compounding can do. Meaning, if you save $500 a month and you save for 30 years, what is that going to lead to? Well, the power of compounding, right? I mean, simple math would be something like 180,000, let's say. But if you save and you compound it, it's hundreds of thousands. So I also was very lucky. I got invited to a lunch that Warren Buffett spoke at in Boston. And it was interesting in the lunch, he was talking about different impacts on his life. And he talked about how for him, the power of compounding also had a big impact, probably bigger in his life than my life. But the point being, I think once you start to get into financial well-being and you just think about what your relationship is with money, exactly what you said. If you can start to at least become a little bit of a saver and then think about the power of compounding and even do out the math, it becomes a very compelling case, even if you're a net spender, to try to save a little bit and put it away, because the financial freedom it buys you in the future is really remarkable.
It's always interesting to hear how people share instances that go back into their early lives, into their childhood, and how impactful that is for their relationship with money ongoing, for the entire duration of their lives. Jackie, this has been an incredible conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your vision, your expertise, your leadership, your work, and the importance of digital identity and paving the way to a safer, more personalized, more trustworthy future that individuals can have as they're building these relationships with people that are going to be managing their money, people that are going to be managing any sort of service that requires that they be known and identified in any meaningful way. Where can our listeners learn more about you and your work or 1414 Ventures?
Well, we have a great website, www.1414ventures.com. And then, of course, we're on LinkedIn. I'm personally on LinkedIn as well as 1414.
Fantastic. For our listeners, how do you think digital identity will change the way you interact with other services, with financial services in the future? Drop a comment. Please share this episode with others who might be curious about 1414 Ventures, about digital identity, about all of those things that Jackie shared at the top of the meeting, about the who and then the how and the infrastructure that are going to power our future. Drop a comment. Let us know what you thought about the podcast, and let's keep the conversation going. Thank you for being here, Jackie.
Thank you, Marla.
Thank you for joining us on the Knowing Me, Knowing You podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Your support helps us bring more transformative conversations to you. Until next time, keep discovering, keep growing, and remember, you're in control of your own financial story. Follow us for more conversations on financial confidence, self-discovery, and the future of money.